If you legally own something, it's yours. But while this simple logic applies to personal property, it doesn't seem to apply to the highest levels of ownership, and countries freely fight for what is not theirs legally. But why would a small country such as Armenia take on the Republic of Azerbaijan, a state over twice its size with over twice its population? That is down to the notion a people can decide their own fate. And Artsakh, the highlight of the disputed area, has a predominantly Armenian population, but it is officially Azerbaijani territory, and breeding and migration don't warrant ownership of inhabited lands. Of course, it is easy to lose sight of simple truths when outside forces are fanning the flames of ethnic and religious differences. Anyway, right or wrong, neither side has won the war. Iran is calling for talks to resolve the crisis, while Turkey is backing one side against the other. I'm Leila Faramarzi, and you're watching Iran Today. Hostile action has been on and off, but basically since 1991, it's been extreme conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The dispute has been over the Nagorno-Karabakh region on their border, which contains the unrecognized Republic of Artsakh. The region was occupied by Armenia along with 7 other Turkish-speaking areas after the dissolution of the USSR, the Soviet Union. The UN Security Council has issued 4 resolutions calling for returning the lands to the Republic of Azerbaijan. In vain. Even Armenia hasn't accepted the independence of the disputed area. Rather, it wants it annexed to Armenia. But how likely is it it'll get the vote with the international community just on account of majority population, not ownership? I'm here in Parliament to ask this and more. Mr. Amouyi is spokesman for the Parliamentary National Security Committee.
Pursuant to international law as the official mediator between these two nations, the Minsk Group has been tasked with settling the conflict between them and finding a solution to a humanitarian life for Armenian people in the Azeri territory, which required negotiations between the parties. Unfortunately, the Minsk Group has failed to fulfill this responsibility assigned to it by the international community and the UN. At the outset of the crisis in the 1990s, the group was active in leading talks. However, over the past 15 years, they have not pursued talks seriously, and therefore their sticking point remains unresolved, thereby fanning the flames of tension between the two nations.
Now the dispute has come to a standstill, but that is still a stone's throw away from peace. Mr. Khashe is Executive Director of the Center for Caucasian Studies.
The ongoing conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia is one of those which we witnessed sporadically before the Russian Revolution. As you know, when both Azerbaijan and Armenia were part of Iran's territory, Azeris and Armenians were living in peace. There were many Armenians in Baku and many Azeris lived in Yerevan. However, following the outbreak of wars between Iran and the Tsarist Russia, leading to the detachment of these areas from Iran, Tsarist Russia and subsequently the Soviet Union, in a bid to overcome their problems, sought to fan the flames of ethnic issues. This is why we have been witnessing such confrontations.
When the USSR took over Russian territories after World War I, it needed to placate many different ethnicities and state powers. So it simultaneously promised Nagorno-Karabakh to both Armenia and Azerbaijan. And when ultimately the USSR took firm control of their territories, it specifically designated the area as the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, NKAO. That was now a federal district within Azerbaijan. That angered its mainly Armenian population.
In 1988, several years before the USSR collapse, conflicts broke out between Armenia and the Socialist Republic of Azerbaijan. After the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union, the conflict intensified from 1992 to 1994 until a ceasefire was established. The ceasefire was in effect until April 2016, when renewed conflict erupted. A Russian brokered truce was declared then. It was holding until last summer.
The latest conflict broke out in late September this year, and not in Karabakh, or Karabakh as we call it in Iran, but on the international border between Armenia and the Republic of Azerbaijan, in the north of the disputed area. It took only a few days, but turned into a full-scale war with support from Turkey. Turkey intends to pit one tribe against another by dispatching Azeri and Turkish forces to the conflict zone. Iran, however, believes this war also to be a religious war by nature. Mr. Beheshtipur, a Caucasus expert, refers to the original roots of the crisis, those deep in history.
The main issue in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is of territorial nature, and it pertains to sovereignty. There's no question of being Azeri or Armenian or being Muslim or Christian. The issue is territorial sovereignty over Karabakh. Citing USSR-era divisions, Azerbaijan lays claim to Karabakh. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, the boundaries of all 15 socialist republics were recognized and 15 nations were born based on Stalin-era demarcations.
You would expect Iran to openly side with Azerbaijan, a similarly predominantly Shia Muslim state that was part of Iran till quite recently. It was only in 1813 that the Treaty of Gulistan, after the First Russo-Persian War, split the Azeri-Iranian people into two. While a portion was possessed by the Russian Tsar, then by the USSR, and is now an independent state called the Republic of Azerbaijan with 9 million Azeris, the portion remaining in modern Iran has over 1.5 times that. All in all, the Islamic Republic of Iran has up to 20 million indigenous Azeris. Mr. Rezvanpur is a Caucasus affairs expert and on Iran's Expediency Council.
Of course, more Azeri ethnics are living in Iran, and if you date back to history, date back to 100 years ago, Azerbaijan Republic belonged to Iran. Okay. Nowadays, there is a kind of, interference by outside powers in order to create, the dispute between Iran and neighboring states, in order to just show their support for the Azeri ethnics who are living in Iranian territory. So Iranian government should be very careful about these kinds of acts, especially on behalf of Turkey and Azerbaijan.
Given Azeris comprise a fourth or fifth of the country's total population, Iran ought to perhaps support the Republic of Azerbaijan, not to upset the Azeris of Iran. But apart from calling for Armenia to return possessed lands to Azerbaijan, Iran remains neutral and steadfast in promoting a diplomatic solution to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict.
When we say Iran is neutral, it means active and positive neutrality. What does that mean? It means that Iran has never recognized Armenian occupation of the territory. Rather, Iran has openly rejected Armenia's occupation of Azeri territory. However, Iran has not resorted to military or non-military action in favor of Armenia or Azerbaijan. The reason is that Iran maintains it's a historical dispute stemming from territorial sovereignty, and there is no military solution to this issue. Both sides have to embrace talks for which an independent and neutral mediator is required. A country currying favor with either side could not be a qualified mediator.
What exactly is Turkey after? A part of Azerbaijan is still in Iran, and Iran has no claim.
Turkey's policy has various aspects. It is partly related to its rivalry with Russia and partly to its rivalry with Iran. It would be unrealistic to think that Turkey would be envisaging any attachment of Azerbaijan. However, Turkey has always sought land communications with Iran, and the Iran-Armenia border cuts such communications. Turkey wishes to be linked to the Republic of Azerbaijan, the Caspian Sea, and Central Asia.
Turkey has dispatched different kinds of military equipments and also military personnel, as I stated, from the northern Syria. They have hired different kinds of warlords, and they are sending them by Toyotas to the frontiers between Azerbaijan and Armenia in order to fight on behalf of the Azeri government. So this is a condition in which the clash of interests between Iran, Turkey and Azerbaijan will be very, very, visible.
While Azerbaijan is a brother state, Armenia is also a neighbor and cousin state. Also, Armenia has enjoyed steady relations with Iran, especially in the energy sector. Azerbaijan, on the other hand, invited in Israel for support. Secular Azerbaijan was one of the first Islamic countries to establish relations with the enemy of the Islamic world. Azerbaijan has allowed Israel into its soil. What danger might that pose for Iran?
The history of the Zionist regime shows that its presence everywhere has been negative and non-constructive. It endangers security rather than guarantees it. The Zionist regime owes its survival to causing division. Its illegitimate life benefits from any conflict between others. We are worried about the presence of Israelis everywhere in the world, including around our own country. We expect all nations to take into account the destructive role of this regime. That is why the Zionist regime would not help guarantee security to any nation.
Whatever the motivation, Baku's policy will only have yielded opposite results. For as long as Iran remains neutral, it insists it act as a mediator in peace talks. This is while Azerbaijan proposed Turkey. That both undermines Iran's position in the South Caucasus and invites in further foreign interference. Because Armenia will most likely veto Turkish intermediation, and in Iran's absence, other countries will fill a seat at the negotiating table. There's plenty more to be said, and that we will do, but only after a quick look at what other media outlets have to say, with Shahrzad.
Hi, my name is Shahrzad Manoucheri, and we'll be reviewing the latest update on the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and Iran's stance and solution. In an article by Mehr News, we witness Iran's positions on Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Ali Rabi'i, the government spokesman, said on September 29th, "We are following the recent conflict in the occupied territories of the Republic of Azerbaijan with great care and concern. We believe that the Republic of Azerbaijan and the Republic of Armenia inspired and energized history and the coexistence of civilizations in the pre-colonial centuries, and by relying on their cultural commonalities, can find a peaceful way to resettle the displaced and return to pre-occupation times. The Islamic Republic is ready to help establish lasting peace in the region." Rabi'i stressed, "Iran holds a very clear position on the need to observe and recognize the territorial integrity of the Republic of Azerbaijan, and it has repeatedly emphasized this legitimate right within the framework of international law and UN resolutions." Tehran Times reports Nagorno-Karabakh conflict has no military solution, says senior MP. Conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region cannot be resolved militarily, a senior Iranian lawmaker has said. Negotiation and dialogue are the only solutions to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and this conflict cannot be settled militarily, said Hossein Nushabadi, the head of the parliament's International Diplomacy and National Interests faction. This conflict is nothing new. The Nagorno-Karabakh region has always been claimed to be part of the two countries. Armenia has seized Nagorno-Karabakh in a war that happened years ago, but Azerbaijan wants to take it back. On the other hand, Armenia also considers the region as part of its territory because this region is very important in the Caucasus, Nushabadi said in an interview. Valdai Club claims 8 principles of Iran's foreign policy towards the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. In an article, Dr. Vali Khaldeji, a Tehran-based expert on Central Asia and Caucasian studies, proposes 8 principles for Iran's foreign policy towards the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. This would contribute to a better disclosure of Iran's approaches as an influential actor in the South Caucasus, especially regarding recent tension between Armenia and Republic of Azerbaijan on Nagorno-Karabakh. These 8 principles are as follows. Recognizing the government of Azerbaijan's right to sovereignty over the Karabakh region and 7 regions around it. Non-recognition of the Republic of Artsakh and other political developments in the Karabakh region. The balanced approach and maintenance of relations between both Armenia and the Republic of Azerbaijan. Opposing the war using force to resolve the Karabakh crisis. Maintaining the rights and security of the Armenians of Karabakh and the Karabakh peace plans. Opposing the interference of trans-regional powers in resolution of the Karabakh crisis, opposing the stationing of international peacekeeping forces in the Karabakh contact lines along the Iranian border, and mediating the process of peace and dispute resolution upon the request from the governments of Azerbaijan and Armenia. That's all for this segment. We'll see you next week.
As it is, the war is spilling into Iranian territory because of proximity alone. A number of artillery shells and rockets recently landed in Iranian territory, including a residential area kilometers away from the battle zone.
We are facing challenges with our own territory now. More than 50 rockets have so far struck Iran's territory. Some farmlands have been damaged. In border areas, I saw some homes that had been targeted. Both sides claim there have been shooting errors, but we cannot tolerate such conditions. We have issued serious warnings to both sides to take their hostilities further from Iran's border. We have sensitive facilities in those areas. We have strategic dams located on the border Aras River. These dams supply both drinking water and irrigation water. Therefore, we feel worried.
Israel has publicly harmed Iran and threatened military strikes on this country. So the least Iran can expect of Azerbaijan is to comply with neighborly relations and keep shared borders free of hostiles' presence. Iran has issued a grave warning that should trans-regional armed forces be posted near its borders, it will take that as a serious security threat and target them on sight.
The Zionist regime sees the Islamic Republic of Iran as its arch-foe. That is why it prioritizes proximity to the borders of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The interesting point is that Israel's military aid to Azerbaijan may be used against Iran. Israel is supplying drones to Azerbaijan. We have seen that the Zionist regime has been using this technology against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Therefore, in addition to selling arms, the Zionist regime is pursuing other objectives.
The war between Baku and Armenia involves all regional powers, Iran, Turkey and Russia, and the latter two are not impartial. Clearly, this means the conflict can blow up into a vast regional war and turmoil, and instability of unpredictable dimensions and scale. A broken fabric of regional relations will only invite in a foreign presence into too many cracks to clear and seal any time soon.
No peace plan is envisaged in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict without taking into consideration the interest of Iran, Turkey and Russia. Russia shares border with Azerbaijan, while Turkey shares a long border with Armenia. For its part, Iran shares borders with Azerbaijan, the occupied Karabakh area, Armenia and Nakhchivan.
Not everyone in Azerbaijan agrees with their government's embrace of Israel. Ilgar Ibrahimoglu is a cleric who campaigns for a greater role for Islam in Azerbaijan. He expects Baku to embrace Iran in turning away from Israel. He said, Azerbaijan shouldn't be friendly with a regime that carries out state terror against another people, the Palestinians. Israel can't beat Iran. It couldn't win in Gaza or Lebanon, and it won't win in Iran. War does not bring with it just a lack of security. It also means poverty and falling behind rather than advancing. The Iranian government believes economic growth is not possible without security in the region. That is to say, any war and conflict will only make people's lives even more difficult at a time when the coronavirus has exacerbated, even caused a severe economic downturn. In a modern global village, one would expect more immediate and effective intermediation to resolve an already existing dispute. But a vacuum of such brokership has caused what was a standstill to break out into the recent Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Officially, Russia is the regional mediator, as it co-chairs the Minsk group together with the US and France.
Both
warring parties asked for Iran's mediation. The Armenian president and the Azeri caretaker president traveled to Iran, and even a truce agreement was signed. However, other regional actors did not favor Iran's positive role in this conflict. That is why the truce was violated, and Armenian forces targeted and occupied part of Azerbaijan's territory.
The Minsk group is morally bankrupt and interesting only for historians of diplomatic failures, and has been so since its establishment. The historian Maxime Gouin astutely described its role as such, given it achieved nothing in 28 years. Not a single square kilometer was evacuated by Armenians.
The heads of state from the Minsk group, the US, France and Russia, are not really looking for any settlement. Each side is pursuing its own interests. The group's structure shows they are not after any solution. The US and France are located far from this region, and therefore they could not provide any effective help to this conflict, as sometimes its continuation would serve their interests. Russia, as an authoritarian actor, would like to have everything in its own hands. That has been the case so far in regional conflicts. However, Russia has not been serious in dealing with the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict.
The OSCE Minsk group was formed to find a peaceful solution to the conflict, but to no avail. A ceasefire, however, was agreed upon in 1994. But since that, talks to resolve the conflict largely stalled, as everything in this program suggested. OSCE, by the way, stands for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Explains their apathy towards security in our corner of Eurasia.
Russia is a member of Eurasian Cooperation Organization, which Armenia is a member of. Armenia has a military pact with Russian government. So in any act of great war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, certainly Russia will back Armenia against Azerbaijan. So we should not create a condition. We should not, the warring side should not create a condition in which this kind of conflict will expand in other territories, something like Georgia, something like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan.
Iran, for its part, looks to construction to partially alleviate problems in the region. It seeks extensive, fast cooperation with its neighbors to build and complete the North-South Corridor, or INSTC. That is a 7,200-kilometer-long freight route connecting India, Iran, Azerbaijan and Russia via ship, rail and road.
The North and South Corridor is a strategic corridor which will be beneficial for all states, especially Iran, in the next couple of decades. So Iran is trying to just keep the tranquility of this corridor just keep the tranquility of this corridor as well. So any conflict, any presence of potential conflicts in this corridor will be detrimental to Iranian interests and also neighboring states, because from the north, Russia and all Central Asian states can export their products to the southern Iranian port of Bandar Abbas and also Persian Gulf states, and vice versa.
Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov said Russia also supports construction of the north-south transport corridor involving Iran and the east-west corridor engaging Turkey. He also mentioned the importance of the Russia-Azerbaijan-Iran energy bridge. and that he is sure the three countries will implement the project by uniting their electrical power generating and transporting systems. That's it for today. Thanks for watching from the whole team. Do watch again at the same times next week and each week after. And don't forget to leave your comments and topic requests. Bye for now.